Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of CFO Plans Fireside Chat. Today, I'm meeting with Chris Jenks. As you know, like in this Fireside Chat series, we talk to our client CEOs and bring out their stories, how they have built their companies, their current challenges, the status of the operations going on, and the future path forward. So today, with that, with Chris Jenks, who is the president of Vesta, well-known property management company here in Southern California. Chris, nice to see you finally.
Oh yes, good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having
me. Yeah. So here we are talking today in Manhattan Beach, very close to Chris's office also. So Chris has, you started your career right after college, and you were in brand marketing, and you worked for a few well-known, world-renowned companies like Adidas, and then from there you crossed over to real estate. No surprise, because your education, your formal education, kind of lines up with that. You at Notre Dame, then later on your master's at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
So all that lines up. But I would like to hear from you how you transitioned over to, from brand marketing, leaving a really cushy job, I would say, right? And then from there to starting a company, and then from there how we built that. But before we talk about the company, let's talk about you. Like if you can kind of walk us through that journey.
Sure. Sure. Let's see. After Notre Dame, I moved out to California.
Yeah.
And I figured I wanted LA because every major company would have a division or a headquarters out here. So I moved out from Colorado and started working at a company called YKK, which makes zippers.
Right.
And it is still the world's biggest zipper manufacturer. And then after a few years, I went back to business school. And then I was looking for a job, but I wasn't completely focused on sports. I was just wanting to find a job where I liked the product, and I knew I'd do marketing. But I wanted to find a company where I liked the product and I'd get behind it.
Right.
And I kind of lucked out and started working for a division of Nike that made headwear.
Right.
And I did that for about 4 years, and then I moved to a licensee of Adidas that did accessories. So the headwear was kind of the overlap there. We did hats, bags, all kinds of other stuff.
Right.
And then after a few years there, I went up to Adidas headquarters in the US and ran the brand marketing.
Right.
After that, my wife and I decided we'd move back to LA because it's a big move to move from here to Portland.
Right.
It was great for me because I was traveling a lot and all that, but it is still pretty rainy in Portland. And we were happy to be back. And then I started working with Body Glove, and I did that for about 6 years. And then we left that, and I wanted to get my real estate license. We had a house that we had lived in that we started renting out, and so that was kind of my foray into property management.
What made you go into that direction? Like, I know you had some formal education in real estate, but what made you go from one day you wake up and
Well, I actually thought I would not be going back to the corporate world. My wife is the president of Agron, which is the licensee of Adidas. So she's got a corporate job, and I thought I would not go back. So I was just going to get my license and kind of, see what happens, bounce around a little bit. I figured, we would buy stuff or we would sell stuff or whatever. And then one of the owners of Westar knew that I was in that world, and he asked me to come in and help run the company. So I started actually February 27th, 2017. So it'll be almost 7 years.
Yeah.
And it's been great. It's been a very interesting experience. Property management it's really strange and interesting industry.
Right.
Because we we're managing properties. Most of Westar's properties are third party.
Right.
So we don't own them. We own a few.
Right.
But the majority are owned by other people.
Right.
And so we're reporting to them. We're taking care of generally their most valuable asset.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, we're working with tenants, trying to make them happy and, and give them a safe, comfortable place to live.
Right.
And that's sort of our purpose in life.
Right.
So we're kind of between the two.
Right. So basically what you're saying is you're happy with that decision you made about 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be.
Right.
And it's 24 hours a day, but it's good. It's been a challenge, and it's been, for me, I guess personally for me, it's been a great challenge to build the company.
Right.
And that's sort of what gets me up in the morning.
Right.
And we've got 45 people we employ, and I feel keep the company going and making it profitable and providing a living for all these great people who work at Westar.
That's the biggest entrepreneurial reward, at least for me too. It's great actually. So thanks for the story. So we'll move on to the company side next. Speaking of your company, so I mentioned it's a decent sized Southern California company. So let me talk a little bit about what I mean by decent size. So Westar has over 250 active properties at this point, and about over 40 million in annual rental collection, and 1,200 plus vendors, and then about I would say like a high 7-figure overhead outlay for the vendors annually. So that's quite a decent size.
we pay a lot of bills.
So that's what I mean by well known and decent size. So our listeners have idea of like what I mean by this. So that's quite a feat in about 7 to 8 years during your tenure. So you must have gone through a lot of challenges. The beginning is always hard. Now what we have achieved is well documented, and people know what Westar is, and you have built that trust among the renters and property owners both. So let's walk through that journey, like pretty much year by year if you can, like how you built all this to this level.
When I started, we had roughly 500 units,
right,
and obviously a lot smaller group of employees,
right,
and a lot of those units were some of the owners, and that's kind of what started the company.
Right.
And then we grew. We had generally various real estate agents who would refer business to us. So even though my background is marketing, I've never really done marketing for Westar.
Right.
I probably shouldn't say that, but it's true. We've been lucky. We've been able to grow the business quite substantially through referrals, and I would say that that's very meaningful because of the trust that you said.
Right.
If an owner of a property didn't think we were doing a good job, he or she would not be referring friends or family or whatever.
That's the best confidence that you can win.
Yeah, it's great. And so 2018, 2019 was sort of just an endemic growth. We probably got to 1,800 units, something like that.
Right.
And then COVID came along.
Right.
And we didn't know what to expect, as anybody.
Right.
So I was doing forecasts for collecting 50% of the rent.
Right.
We have a construction arm as well.
Right.
And I was thinking maybe nobody would let us in to fix anything.
Right.
So what would the revenues be? Turned out, thank God, it was not nearly as bad as it could have been.
Right.
Most people paid rent.
Right.
Most people let us get in to fix things.
Right.
But still, it was a lot harder.
Right.
I mean, collecting rent with the government saying that you don't have to pay was quite difficult.
Right. They almost gave a free pass for.
And that was wrong. And really difficult for us. So before COVID, we would collect 99% plus every month, and we wouldn't worry about it. It was never a big deal.
Right.
And during COVID, the 4 years of that,
right.
We never got really, we got down to 88% one month, and
right.
most of it stayed around 90. So
Right.
it wasn't the end of the world. But for the owners of the properties,
Right.
as well as for us, that
Right.
10%
Right.
would have gone straight to the bottom line.
Right, right.
Would have been nice.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, we spent so many human hours on collecting rent
Right.
that it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, it really was a massive adjustment in where you put your time.
Right.
But we needed to do it because we needed to get the money so
Right.
all the properties could pay
Right.
the mortgages and property taxes and all that kind of stuff.
Right, exactly. Speaking of mortgage, like when government came up with that, quote unquote solution, like they didn't give a solution to the mortgage holders.
No.
They're like, oh, you don't have to pay rent, but they didn't solve the
still have to
problem.
pay the mortgage.
You have to
Yeah.
still pay the mortgage for the owners. So,
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
And every one of our properties paid the property taxes, paid the mortgages,
Right.
and all that. And
Right.
I would say, having lived through this firsthand,
Right.
Multifamily investment is an amazing investment vehicle if
Right.
you can make it through a pandemic
Right.
and still do okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Exactly.
But then in 2021,
Right.
we actually grew units by over 40%,
Wow.
which was insane.
Right.
People were back in the market.
Right.
The rates, the mortgage rates were really low.
Right.
Everyone was happy.
Right.
You get a loan for 25-30% down.
Right.
And it was great.
Right.
It was really, a good time to be in property management and
Right.
be investing in properties.
Right. And you're like nicely placed by that time also, because at that time Vesta had made their name. So when people buy their properties, there's a go-to place in Vesta. So
Yeah.
like it was not at the beginning. So it was, so you were kind of at the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
right
that's
after.
fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
We were big enough that we could take on these properties.
Right.
It was hard, but
Right. Right.
we will never turn down business.
Right. Of course.
We'll never turn down good owners
Right.
and good business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now that's good to hear. So now if you think about this year, 2024. Now you're talking about how government comes up with solutions and like how certain things are not really considered. So that leads to like a lot of confusion on one part of the market. So this is an election year. So and then we have these economic pundits predicting some level of turmoil within the year because inflation is still high, and some level of market correction is predicted. So all these things that we hear on news, how do you see it, and like any kind of precautionary measures that you have to take, and how you want to adjust for this market fluctuations?
Yeah, I'm an eternal optimist.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the economy would be okay unless there's a disaster,
right,
like a war or something like that.
Right.
I would think that interest rates will stay about the same for now. Probably maybe at the end of the year.
Right.
Like I wouldn't expect any decreases for a long time.
Right. And I mean, it's a 20-year high, but if you think about the history of interest rate, it's not a high rate at this point. Yeah. So
my first loan was 7%, and I thought it was great.
Right.
And now I couldn't even imagine.
We got spoiled over the last 20 years, I think. Yeah, that's what happened. So people expect that to be 3%, 2%.
Especially the last 10, where it was that, and you could you could buy a property, like again for very little down compared to now. Now it's 50% down, and it's still not completely cash flowing. And who wants that?
Right.
Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
The cap rates are lower than the interest rates, so it's
so,
not a good
but
situation.
definitely when you think about the mortgage rates and other inflationary issues, like if you think about vendors, how they charge, and like utility bills, property taxes, all have gone up. So that means all this ends up in the renter's payment one way or the other. So that means for a renter, it's a little bit unaffordable, I would say, right? So apples to apples. So like so do you think will there be like a demand adjustment, or like will they look for different types of, like same renters would they be looking for a different type of property? Like, do you think something like that would happen?
I don't think so much, especially in our type of properties. Most of our properties are Class C, so they're this baseline. They're not high rises on Wilshire Boulevard, where I think those properties get hit first, and then Class B, and then Class C. But everyone has to have a place to live.
Right, of course.
We've been, I shouldn't say that. Some people just take a unit. But we've been able to increase rents substantially over the last several years, over the last 7 years. And it's, I think for California, it is a lot, but we generally require 3 times income for rent, and so we want to put in a good tenant. Unemployment's still 4%, but really it's probably a little higher than that. So as long as those things keep working, we're not able to increase rents like we had been. So if somebody moved in a year ago and say they were paying $1,800, we're probably going to rent it for $1,850 or something like that if we're lucky. Whereas 2 years ago, we can increase it by $100 or more easily.
Speaking of demand, like something that we saw more over the COVID period was most of these employers would let people work from anywhere in the world. Like, people could work from, like from your home, beach, or a vacation home, or in some other countries. So, so that kind of led to commercial properties being converted into residential. So, at least to a certain extent. So, and also it kind of triggered a movement where, like, investors would consider residential buildings rather than constructing residential buildings rather than commercial properties. So maybe that the supply for residential site probably went up, right? So how do you assess that situation? Like, has that happened, or do you think more investments into residential properties in the future, so that rental cost or the renter's cost will pretty much remain the same because of the supply matter? So how do you see that situation?
I think there's still there's still a lot of demand, and not enough supply,
especially in California.
Especially in California. I think in certain areas of the country that's probably true. But in California, we're way under as far as number of units. My personal opinion is the government needs to get out of the way and let the investors
do that job.
Do that. We have owners who buy dilapidated buildings, and because we have a construction team, we can go in and we can remodel, rehab the interior, the exterior. And because of the inspectors, it takes so long, and the cost is so high. And
I mean, California is one of the hardest places to run a business, let alone a property management business. So I think the building codes and like all these like never-ending permit process really bogs down the whole construction process, right? So
even the ADUs, which I think in 2019 they came out with this state law that says you will be able to make ADUs, and we're going to make it so easy for you. But it still takes so much. 7, 8, 9 months to get a permit. It's not like snapping your fingers. And we're in our portfolio, we probably have maybe 25 ADUs going on at any one time. So people are doing it. But it's taken a long time.
So, and then like especially within these ADUs or even any other construction, like these down to the nail permit requirements, like certain. I mean, it's good when you think about it. I mean, the construction quality is great in the end. However, like the considering the shortage and the demand, if you can ease up a little bit, that's better. So
we're going to make it great. But just give us a break. And unfortunately, we have some inspectors who say, okay, do this. A different inspector comes back 2 weeks later and says, no, do this. And we're like, what?
Exactly.
And it just takes so much time.
And cost, exactly.
Well,
thanks for that perspective. So let's move on to our the back into Vesta back office side in this next segment. Speaking of running an operation of this size, I wouldn't call. I mean, you are not a huge multinational conglomerate, which, by the way, comes with its own benefits, because when you're at that level, you have built public trust. So even you kind of have a luxury of making few mistakes. No one would care. I mean, Disney can make mistakes, Google can make mistakes. People, oh yeah, they'll fix it, So because they have built that trust to a certain extent. You are also not at that very small size company level, because there also you have some leeway. So you are in that tricky situation now. You are in the mid-size market, mid-size company. I mean, little over mid-size, I would say, but you still have to keep working at maintaining that customer trust. And when it comes to you, you have two sets of customers. One, you have the property owners as customers. Then you have the property users, the renters, as customers. So you have to satisfy both sides to keep it running. So when you do this, your back office operation must be well lined up, well tuned, and it should that daily operation must run without any kind of hiccups. So so when you think about it, you have to manage you have to employ proper software. You need to have a proper workflow. The tool set won't be as useful if the workflow and the people who are using it is not managing it right. And then, of course, the third factor is the people who should be qualified enough, technically proficient, managing all that. and then the whole, I would say, the synchronization of all this should happen too. So so how do you look at it? What kind of measures have you put in place so that all these little pieces kind of work together like a well-oiled machine? So if you can kind of shed some light into your own back office operation.
So I'll start by saying that we have a little saying in the company where we build trust by the drops,
right,
and we lose trust by the bucketful.
Right.
And you're right, because of the size that we are, we can do 100 things right, and we do one thing wrong,
right,
and the sky's falling in,
right,
and the owner's yelling and all that, and I get it, and we want to be 100% perfect.
Right.
Well, we're never going to be,
right,
and I'll tell prospective owners that that's a fact, and we're never going to be.
Right.
We want to be up here. There's something's going to go wrong when you're talking about buildings, some of which are 100 years old.
Right.
You're talking about humans, and both our employees and the tenants.
Yeah.
Tenants generally call us when there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a high level of frustration involved.
Right.
So things are going to go wrong.
Right.
But we're also judged and paid for making sure that every penny's accounted for. Yeah. And that's one of our fortes, I'd say. We send out owner reports on the 15th, actually today.
Yeah.
They're going out.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that every penny is accounted for.
Right.
And overall, we do a very good job of that.
Right.
We have a great controller, Maria, who is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to find the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, we understand how important the accounting component is.
Right.
So we can do all this stuff on the property side. We can have great property managers, and that side could be beautiful.
Right.
But if we're not taking care of the back end, which really the outside person doesn't know anything about or care about, just they need everything to be perfect.
Right.
So we do bank reconciliations and everything.
Right.
To make sure that we're 100% perfect.
Because people notice back office only when there's a problem.
Oh, there's a problem. Right. So, right. You didn't pay the mortgage? What?
Right. So and then you obviously are employing industry like leading software in the back end. Like AppFolio to how you use like other enterprise software, like connecting like all the pieces together. So it's absolutely important, right? So so in selecting these like various components, like what do you think about, what is important to you in selecting like either a software or a service provider? Like what are the things that you look for?
I look for, we use AppFolio.
Right.
And that's a great software.
Right.
It's a great property management software, enterprise-wide.
Yeah.
I can see just about anything that I want to see.
Right.
And we use that for our accounting as
and
well.
It's helpful for the consumer, I mean the renters. Or,
it's great for the renters.
But they have their own dashboard. Yeah.
It's great, but it's only as good as the input that you put in.
Right.
So we've got to make sure that we've got good accounts payable, good accounts receivable, good bookkeepers.
Right.
And again, Maria, the controller, oversees all of that.
Right. That's great. So, and then like when you had set up this back office to serve like your two sets of customers in the end, so you obviously have to think about how to manage cost, right? I mean, quality is absolutely important, but within that within certain parameters, you need to manage cost, because ultimately that cost translates into a a property owner's statement basically. So their bottom line gets affected, and secondly, you have all these challenges internally, but any good company would not let the internal challenges translate into problems for their clients, right? So like, I mean, that's the difference between a good company and a great company, right? So if the customers are seeing certain challenges that you face translating into their problems, that's not what they want, right? So here I think your difference is that you manage all the challenges and make sure the back office functions properly, so that those challenges are not kind of invisible to.
Yeah, we don't let the owners see
right
our little warts.
Right. So when you think about that, so you control cost. So in controlling cost, in providing a quality service, that's when Vesta came to us, CFO plans. So obviously, CFO plans have many different industry segments that we serve, but real estate and property management is one of those. So what can you say about us? What can you say about our assigned team to you? So just so that some of the listeners who are kind of tuning in, they can hear firsthand from an actual customer's perspective.
Sure. Well, we started outsourcing about 3 years ago, and it was a big step for us, because just like we talked about, it's so important, and to give a little bit of that away, so it's out of your control, is scary.
Yeah.
And
it's like sending your kids to college.
Sometimes you want to get out of here, but it's scary, and I'm pretty conservative, and Maria's even more conservative, and it took some time to even convince her that we should do this. So we started with a different company, and it was not good. It wasn't successful at all. So we started looking for a replacement, and luckily we found CFO Plans, and we've been partners for over 2 years now, and it's been great. And I'm not just saying that. We work with CFO Plans to do just about all of our accounts payable, and in property management, of course, utilities are massive, and it's very time consuming. But it's a job that one could learn and do a good job at, and it's fairly repetitive. So we would start by outsourcing the utilities. If once we feel comfortable with that, we start outsourcing more and more accounts payable, because like you say, we've got a heck of a lot of accounts payable. And with AppFolio, we've got a great, it's called smart billing, where we can send all the bills via one email, and the vendors send them to this system. They get uploaded, and then they get approved by the property manager, and then they get paid. It's been working really, really well. And what it allows us to do is really we're able to have more people in the accounting department for less cost, and the people inside the office can do a little more of the customer service, talking to tenants and talking to vendors and talking to utility companies, which maybe CFO Plans is less set up for than that, just because of location.
Yeah, and then also like you can adjust the service level, like basically as you grow, like you just let us know, and then we are the ones dealing with that issue. Like we grow the assigned team accordingly, the resources improve, so you don't have to, you have at least one less headache in your day-to-day life. So so that becomes our problem. So and then in terms of quality, you know, so what you're saying is you what you expected in terms of quality, it has been great. So you know, for a cost-effective you know, execution. So good to hear. Like that's I mean, you mentioned customer referrals in your own business. So this is what we love to hear, because you know that's the ultimate stamp on our service, like service quality. Because if one customer is not satisfied, you know, that propagates into pretty much you know, whole market knows next day. So yeah. So
and one thing I can tell you is, like with us, it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. But you, like us, we have to not let anyone know. So turnover is a perfect example. When we lose somebody in our accounting department, I can't call up the owners and say, you know, we're not going to send them out on the 15th. We're going to do it on the 20th because we lost somebody. We have to adapt and take care of it. Just like with you, we have certain jobs that CFO Plans does, and whether someone's on vacation or goes on maternity leave or whatever, you take care of that. So we don't see the issues. You know?
No, that's great to hear. So that's the ultimate reassurance that we love to hear, because like when we get that trust, that when we earn that trust, you know, that gives, you know, not only the satisfaction but our own reassurance that, hey, we can do this again and again and again, because you know, the old saying, you know, you do something right one time and repeat it million times. So that's what we want to do. So yeah, so good to hear. So now from there, like let's talk a bit about your Vesta future. Like so what is next? Like you know, what are the plans, you know, as you know, within your liberty to, you know, reveal, like, you know, where would the company go from here? Like, are you going to go into different geographical regions, or you want to stay here and grow within the community? Like, how do you see it?
Yeah, well, we want to be the most trusted property management company in Southern California. So we don't have any plans to grow outside of here right now. If an owner were to say, hey, I want to buy a bunch of properties in Phoenix or somewhere, I want you to manage them, we would consider that. But we're not actively looking to expand out there. There's thousands of buildings in LA that we can work on.
Exactly. I mean, California is the fourth, fifth largest economy in the world, as a, you know, as a separate economy. So we have enough going on here. So that's quite a market. You know?
There's no shortage of buildings. So we want to continue to grow. We've got a lot of buildings in Long Beach. So our service area, for lack of a better term, is the LA Basin. So we haven't gone over to like Sherman Oaks or Calabasas or anywhere like that. We do have properties in Burbank, close to Pasadena, Highland Park. We go out to Huntington Park, Southgate, those areas, and then a lot in Long Beach, a lot in Inglewood, Santa Monica. I'd like to grow more in Redondo Beach and Torrance, Inglewood. Inglewood's great, and not just because of all the football and the basketball and that kind of stuff. It's just it's been a good market for us.
So Vesta wants to be the star in the Western region.
There you go. I like it.
It's a great conversation. Thank you, Chris, for you know, first of all, agreeing to do this and you know, talking good things about us, and at the same time giving our listeners you know, how you grew the company and like what your plans are and like how you are keeping up the trust. So that's very beneficial to anyone listening. So folks, we will join you with another client CEO fireside chat pretty soon. Until then, goodbye. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, and we look forward to growing.